We're humbled by our next speaker, whose work continually challenges some of the thorniest issues in society. It's a great pleasure to welcome Sarah Maple to the stage, who will be interviewed by Zealous's marketing director, Valentina Fois.
Hi, hello everybody. Well, to start with, I'm just going to introduce myself very quickly. So my name is Valentina Fois, and I am the marketing director at Zealous, but I'm also an art curator, and I specialize in working with emerging artists and digital art. I've been working with Sarah previously on many occasions, so I do know her work quite well and look forward to talk you through her work. So I'm going to introduce her briefly again, and then we jump into the question. So Sarah Maple completed a BA in Fine Art from Kingston University in 2007. The same year, she won the For New Sensation, which is a prize done by Saatchi, the Saatchi Gallery. Sarah's work, film and performance have been exhibited internationally at galleries and institutions, including the South Bank Centre, the New Art Exchange in Nottingham, and many more. In 2015, Sarah released her first book, You Could Have Done That. And in 2015, she won the Sky Art Academy Fellowship from Sky Art. But we're going to speak in details about some of those points. So, hi, Sarah. Thank you for coming. Yeah. To start with, I would like to ask you, like, you often define yourself as a feminist. What does that mean to you? And do you think that in 2016 we still need to raise awareness about feminism?
Yeah, absolutely. I think initially when I first started making my work and I first started getting recognised for my work, I didn't really see myself as a feminist. I was just reacting to things as I saw them and how I felt at art school and stuff. It was only later that people started saying your work's feminist, and I thought, oh, maybe I do need to look into this, because before I was always just like, no, I'm not a feminist. And so now through my work, I sort of try and have a bit of a play with that about what a feminist actually is. And for me, feminism is just equality between men and women. And I think a lot of people are still quite scared of that. So I just sort of try and question people's perceptions of gender roles in my work. So I think that's an ongoing discussion. I think it will always be part of my work as well, because it's just so part of who I am, I think. So yeah, I think definitely there's so much, all you have to do is turn on the TV and look online, and there's so much stuff that's not right with regards to equality and gender. So definitely it's an ongoing discussion, absolutely.
I remember perhaps seeing lots of action from your side regarding the page 3 issue. You know, since you just mentioned like TV and magazine, for who is not aware, usually page 3 is the page dedicated to, how would you say, like some nice female body exposure, let's say. So you will have maybe some nudity or, you know, very explicit content, let's say. And
yeah, it's a tradition
yeah.
in our country. But I thought it was quite funny. People were so upset about getting rid of it, like they were taking away their human rights or something. But it was quite funny, really, because it's interesting how the Sun dealt with the page 3 when they actually got rid of it, because they technically have got rid of their breasts on page 3, but then they made out that they hadn't. But if you look at the Sun every day, I have a look, try and look at it and see if they've got any breasts in it. There are no breasts in there anymore, so they have actually got rid of it. So I do feel quite good about that.
To go to my next question, which is related to this, as a female artist, would you say there are less opportunity to get showcased within big galleries, commercial galleries especially, and institutions like, again, museum? I mean, do you think there is any difference between a female artist and a male artist to the number of opportunity available to you to get exposure?
I think things are getting better, but the stats are still really bad if you look at the stats. For example, I believe the only gallery to have 50-50 male and female exhibitions is the Whitechapel, and that's obviously directed by a woman. it's a stat that I read recently that 70% of galleries, 70% of representation is of males as opposed to 30% of women. And so there are still things like that. And I think it's getting better, definitely, because before when I always look at galleries and how many men there are and how many women are represented. Yeah. And the majority is usually more men, but it's definitely getting better, I've noticed. And more women are being spoken about now than before. So, yeah, I think there is definitely more opportunities there. And I don't know why men are exhibited more than women. I don't know if it's an unconscious thing where people think that men maybe have more of an intellectual thing behind their work. I also, because a lot of my work was inspired by the fact that I felt like I was being dismissed a lot. My ideas were being dismissed, and I was sort of like, "Oh, you're a silly girl." It felt a bit like that. So now I feel even more empowered to just, sort of be more bold in my work and everything. But yeah, I don't know if men maybe are sort of conditioned to be more confident than women, and women give up quicker. I don't know really, but I think things are getting better. And so I think within the next 20 years, I'm hoping there'll be a 50-50.
But I also think that one of the problems for sure is the fact that, when you, let's say that you're a woman, you got your career, and then you get to a point where you have to choose between your career and your family, because maybe, you're feeling like having a family, raising up your kids, and there is not enough support, for you to be able just to keep going, pushing your career, and at the same time, raise your family really and your children. I think that's another problem that doesn't really help women in all sorts of work, not just artists, of course. We always tend to let the men go and do the work, and we will maybe stay home and support them. To get back to your point when you say maybe they gave up a little bit easily, but yeah, it's not so much for me an issue of being give up easily. I think they just need to make a tough choice, and sometimes it's like renouncing their career because they have to maybe look after their children.
Yeah, I think it's still a taboo for women to pursue high-powered jobs and stuff, because people judge the women more. It's not, it's just crazy that now we still look badly upon women for going and pursuing their roles and letting men get hold of the kids. So it's a bit of trouble, really. I don't know. I think it is a bit of a problem for women. I suppose, like my age of 30, then you still have to start thinking, do I want to have kids? I know you've got to consider it, I suppose. So.
And what is your personal experience? Because I always like to speak about, when I interview people, the career they do, the job, but also give a little bit of insight into your personal life, so people can get to know you better. In your case, are you receiving support from your family, from your partner? Do you think that they support you enough to just be out there, pull yourself out there and be an artist?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of artists that are successful have had support from someone. You definitely can't do it on your own. And a lot of friends of mine who are doing well have had a parent support, so lived at home or something like that. It's very hard, especially when it's hard to make money and everything. So I definitely have always had support from my parents when I was younger, and now sort of have a husband and stuff. But it's not like financial support, or unfortunately, I don't get any financial support from him. but you can't, definitely no one can do anything without support. So yeah, I feel like I'm supported.
Which is what I want to ask you next, actually, because I'm aware that I live in London, and it's not a news for anyone that it's very expensive. London is a very expensive city. Rent is expensive. The transport is expensive. Pretty much everything is expensive, really. And sometimes I'm wondering, how does maybe an artist, which often they unfortunately have very little income, be able to support their artistic practice in a city like London? So my question is, what is your experience to start with? And I would like to know, do you need to do multiple jobs at the same time to support yourself as an artist? Do you have the, let's call it privilege, unfortunately, we have to call it privilege, of only being an artist? Does that apply to you?
Yeah.
So yeah, what is experience?
I personally have found it quite hard in terms of getting money, because my work isn't essentially like the most sellable stuff, because I don't think people really want to be confronted with stuff all the time. and I'm not really willing to make anything to sell because I don't really see the value in that, and I just can't be asked to make something just for the money side. So I always make things I feel passionate about. So sometimes that isn't always the stuff that people are going to want to buy and everything. So you kind of have to rely on that. But I think you have to figure out other ways to make money, unfortunately. So a lot of friends of mine have had other jobs, part-time jobs. But now I think once you get to like early 30s, you do start to learn, and you don't get the mick taken out of you as much. Because when you're younger, I think you allow people to get away with murder, and you do things for free, and you allow yourself to not get paid and stuff like that. So it only occurred to me a couple of years ago that I can actually charge people to exhibit my work. Because I had an exhibition and someone was like, oh, we're going to pay you this much. And I was like, what? I can get paid? So now I always ask. I always ask for a fee now. So that's really helpful. And I think you have to have the confidence to apply for funding as well. Because I never applied for anything because I just assumed that I wouldn't get it. I never had the confidence to apply. But it was only a couple of years ago that I had a performance piece that I really wanted to make, and there was no way that I was going to make it unless I had the funding. And I applied 3 times, I got rejected 3 times. And the only time I got it was when I just thought, oh, sod this, I'm just going to be really blatant in the application, I'm just going to write, here we go. And then I got it, and I thought, wow. So I think any advice for applying for stuff, don't write loads of waffle in it like I did. Just be blatant, what you want, what you're going to get out of it.
Straight to the point.
Yeah, so now I've sort of got the knack for it. So then you can get some really good funding opportunities from that. But it's difficult. But there is funding out there, definitely. There's a few good ones. So obviously Arts Council, and then there's another one I heard of recently called Patron, and it's really good. It's basically a bit like Kickstarter, but you can get people to sign up to support you per month. So you can get people to pledge, I'm going to give you £50 a month, stuff like that. So I would advise to look at that one as well.
Are you using that platform already for something?
I've just signed up to it actually, so I'm hopefully going to sign up for my next project, definitely, because it looks really good, and I've had lots of people that have used it, have had success on it. So that one, I think there's one called The Space as well that I've heard is really good, so it's definitely worth checking out.
Well, we touched on one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I think let's go a little bit deep on that. So, as Sarah was saying, there are few funding and platform available where you can pitch your project, and and wait and see if you're going to receive any funding for that. But I often feel that there's not enough out there really. And so it's just not, there's not many funding available, and sometimes I find it very hard to apply, because you see, as a curator, I had to apply myself for myself as well from time to time to sustain some of the projects that I've been working on, and the competition is really high, and again the application process is often very hard, and people, I believe, most of the time, they might feel a little bit cut off. What do you think? Did you find it, because you said you've been rejected 3 times, and that was due to the fact that maybe you were waffling around a little bit, but did you feel that maybe the wording, the tone were maybe a little bit too complicated, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think I was trying to be something I wasn't, and I was trying to sort of big myself up and I don't know, be some other kind of artist. Whereas when I actually was myself, and I said, this is what I am, this is what I'm about, this is experience that I've been through, and this is what I want to say next. That's when I actually was successful, and I sort of could prove that I could deliver on what I wanted to do. So that's when I felt that the application was stronger.
But the process itself, I'm speaking, like, have you found that complicated to actually apply, or it was quite straightforward?
I think they do make it quite straightforward, but there's just so many.
Okay.
So you just have to be quite relentless and just apply for things, because I apply for quite a lot of stuff, even if you think you won't get it. Like, if there's some sort of cool award or something, and there's a really good panel of judges, I will apply anyway, just to get my work seen, and a lot of my friends do that as well. I know someone who did get an exhibition just from a panel of judges one of the panel liked their work and gave them a show, but they didn't win the award, but they got the show from something else. So it's lots of opportunities that you can get if you just put yourself out there, I think.
That's interesting because, yeah, I felt, had the opposite experience where I felt that the process was very, very complicated and was made complicated without reason, in my opinion.
How so?
Well, you know, sometimes I understand where they're coming from. I understand that sometimes the process is very long because they try to, you know, to put off people that they just want to apply for the sake of applying. And if you actually take the chance of applying for something and spend 3 hours to write your application, you know, they know that they're going to have people that they really, really want to have the opportunity. So I do understand that. But yeah, sometimes I find the whole process, yeah, quite stressful, very long.
Boring as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, very stressful, I would say. Well, I'm very happy to hear that, you know, your experience has been actually very pleasant and you got, you know, funding in the end. Speaking of which, you got funding also from Sky Art. So yeah, you won, for who is not familiar, Sky Art every year award 5 artists 30 grand, so a big sum of money, 30,000, and those need to be spent to work throughout a project for a year with a show, right? So at the end you're supposed to be ready to have a show within 1 year time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so anyone can apply. So theatre people, dance,
visual art,
anything that's, or even like creative producer, documentary filmmakers, anything that's creative. The applications have actually just gone live now, so you can actually apply now.
There is artists and
yeah, it's really good. So they get, so 5 people, £30,000 of funding, and then you get a documentary for Sky Arts and
mentorship, which I think is fantastic, right? So yeah, can you tell us a little bit more if you have any suggestion or people that, you know, I know that there's probably some artists in the audience, maybe they're thinking of applying. If you have any tips you want to share with them, but also if you can talk us through a little bit more your experience with the mentorship scheme, because I think that is something fantastic when you've been given the opportunity to meet top-notch people within the creative sector, museum directors, curators.
Yeah, because initially when I got the award, I was so happy about the money that I didn't even think about the mentoring. So I was like, yeah. But then actually the mentoring side of it is amazing because I'm really rubbish at networking, and networking is really hard, I think. And part of the award is you get a mentor from Sky, you get a mentor from your industry. So I've got Godfrey Warsdale as my mentor, which is incredible, and he's really great, and he can introduce me to people, and they help sort of show your work to people you may have not been able to show it to before. It's a way of getting in there with different industries as well. And it's really good exposure because they do a documentary for Sky Art, so that's going to go on there. And it's for anyone who's 30 and under, so that's the only catch. But yeah, if you go on my Twitter, I've retweeted it recently. It's Sky Academy Art Scholarship, and you basically, it's good if you've got an idea of something. And it's a very simple application, actually. It's basically like a 1 word of description of your work and then what you'd like to do and how the award will help you. So
it's a very simple process.
Very simple, yeah. Good. I was very surprised at how simple it is for what a great award it is. Yeah, so then you get whittled down and then they'll interview you. But I think as long as you are, like I said before, just don't waffle and just be to the point about what you want to do. And just be honest about how you want to represent yourself. Your personality comes across, I think. And that's what they're looking for. So I would definitely advise to apply for that.
Nice. And when is your show for Sky Art due to?
Well, it's either in October this year or April next year. It's not 100%.
Okay, so you still have a little bit of time to
I've
prepare.
still haven't really done enough work yet. It will be good in the end, it'll be fine.
Good. I think I would like, if it's possible, to start the slide, and maybe, you know, if you want to spend a few words in each work, so the audience can get familiar with what you're doing, and, you know, what informs your artistic practice.
So this is one where I was looking at how people perceive feminism and feminists, and the idea that basically feminism is about equality between sexes. And I think once people can understand that, then they can embrace it and they can be part of it and sort of help with equality. But I think in my work I sort of like to provoke people a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
A bit of a debate game. It's funny because I've done quite controversial things, but this is the one that people get the most angry about. But it has a lot of support as well. People really like the image, but it's sort of just trying to goad you into thinking, you know, what is if the opposite is an arsehole, then sort of what is a feminist? So sort of having a bit of a laugh with that.
You often are part of the work. You know,
yeah.
you performing, so you record yourself on video, photography. How's that? Why you often are the subject of your artwork? Did it happen by chance, by experimenting with art, or was there a conscious decision from the very beginning to be part of the work?
Not really. At first I was sort of playing around with things and dressing up and looking at my identity. And then the more that I started working like that, the more I felt that it was integral to the work. Because sometimes I'm actually saying something in the face. Like for this, I've got like a certain facial expression that says something. Sometimes I'm not really 100% sure exactly what I'm trying to put across, but the face says it all. And sometimes it's hard to explain that to someone else. And also I don't think it necessarily has to be someone else. I think as it's so part of who I am with my identity, it makes sense to use me in the work. Yeah. But more recently, I've tried to not use me and see if that changes things.
And how's that working for you? You like it more, or should I get back to the...
I'll get back to me, I think.
Right.
Oh, this is just an installation image from my show at Golden Thread Gallery in Belfast. So we've got Men Straight with Pride over there in the corner. And then an artist and a female artist at the back, which is me wearing my naked suit. Yeah, I don't know how clear it comes across.
This is my favorite work.
Is it?
Yes, you know.
Well, I made this a few years ago actually, but I was looking at because I'm Muslim, so...
Which is the one you sold as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I was looking a lot at my identity, because I've got mixed heritage, so my mum's Muslim, my dad isn't, and he's from the UK, my mum's from Kenya, so there's sort of a real mix there with my upbringing and everything. And sort of when I was at art college was around the time that a lot of conversations were happening about Islam and the whole kind of, a lot of Islamophobia and things like that started appearing in the press and everything, and I was sort of looking at my own mix of identity and looking at that with how the mix of the culture at the time of a lot of Muslim people, a lot of having to deal with a lot of negative things in the press, things like that, and maybe the mix of Western, Eastern cultures and how difficult that can be for a lot of people. And yeah, so there's so much behind these images. I think it's a mix of the political, personal, and the political. So yeah, I like this one.
Yeah, I think especially stuff for teenagers, because they are in that funny time of their life where they're not really sure who they are. Well, not that you ever find out who you really are, really, but you know, when you're 15, 16, you just struggle to, as you say, to discover your real identity, and then people always try to label you with something like, oh, you're Christian, or you're Italian, or you're white, you're black. And then you're like, okay, yeah, so someone told me that I'm Italian, I'm white, and I'm Christian, but what does that mean? Do I really think, does that relate to me? So that is very interesting to see how you actually, your work is informed a lot about your background and your origin, which I think is a good way to find yourself. Would you say that? That's how you try to understand who you are?
Yeah, I think so, because initially, I think when I made this work, I was sort of going through my own, not identity crisis, but like, you know, you reach a certain age and you start to think about everything that you've been taught to believe when you're growing up. And so I sort of started to explore all that stuff through my work, I think. A lot of humour in my work and having a bit of a laugh about stuff as well that I've taken very seriously. So I didn't actually touch on this. Well, I made a lot of this work about my Islamic upbringing at think 2007 and 8 mainly.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of backlash against that work. So I didn't touch on it again from then until now, I think. So that's what my New Sky project is about, all about maybe how we can possibly self-censor, especially with like online and stuff and everything, and how you can tweet something and then you get a barrage of abuse and things like that. So I'm really interested in that. And yeah,
I know you've been receiving lots of death threats as well, online, on Twitter especially, right? Is that correct?
Well, not actually on Twitter.
Was it the Guardian on the...
No,
was
it was
on the comment from your Guardian article?
The Guardian article wasn't death threats, actually. It was before that. It was before when I showed some of this work was in that show as well. And it was actually more in your face than that. It was like I had like a brick through the window of the gallery and emails and things. But so it's before like Twitter and stuff. So I don't know what would happen if Twitter was around at that time. But I mean, yeah, it sort of went a bit crazy in the news and things at the time.
And that had an impact on you, like making almost like stopping.
Yeah, because then I think I felt like I was strong enough to continue, and I thought no one's ever going to tell me that I can't make this work. But then I didn't actually make work like that, and I felt like it was my choice. But then now I'm revisiting the idea that maybe it wasn't. It was something that I was...
Unconsciously, maybe you were conscious of the fact that it was dangerous somehow, and you were scared.
And that's why I worry about young girls on Twitter who are activists and saying really interesting things, and how they get shouted down a lot by people, and it makes them eventually stop doing what they're doing, and that's really sad. And I've got amazing friends who are journalists and writers, and they write about feminism, and they've stopped publishing their work because of they can't deal with the abuse anymore. So... yeah, when people say we don't need feminism anymore, that's what makes you think.
Yeah, that's why when you need it, indeed. I totally agree. That's one of your latest work. Yeah. So maybe you could also, once you talk about this, maybe you can also talk us a little bit about what you're working on at the moment and what is coming up next for you.
Okay, I don't know how clearly you can see the image from there, but it says on there, anti-rape cloak. So how this work came about was I had a residency last year with the Sisters of Perpetual Resistance in London, and they are a group that do sort of feminist activist artwork, and they came up with an idea for a residency where the artists were to create an object of nuisance, and it was all inspired by the suffragettes and how when the suffragettes were obviously protesting, people said they were a nuisance, and it's this funny patronising thing that women are actually doing something really amazing and empowering, and they've been told they're a nuisance, and that's just not a lot has changed actually from then to now. And so the whole thing was about making the subject of nuisance. So at the time I was looking at victim blaming, and I was getting really angry about how when women are abused, raped, they are made to feel it's their fault, and the women often talk themselves into thinking it's their fault. And people think that you shouldn't have been wearing that, you shouldn't have been there at that time, you shouldn't have led that person on. And it just makes me so angry. And it just, one of those things where I think, you know, why do we never talk about the rapist? Well, we always put the focus on the victim. So I had this idea, this sort of ironic cloak, that if you were to wear it, you would suddenly be completely safe from abuse and you were somehow protected. It's quite funny because some people thought I was being serious, and I'm not obviously being serious. But so then I took the cloak and I went to America last year, and I did a road trip, and so I went into various situations wearing the cloak and took pictures of myself. So I've got one, this is the Mojave Desert. And then I've got one Las Vegas and in New Jersey, in New York, and all different situations wearing the cloak and stuff. So
this work also got lots of positive feedback. It kind of went viral somehow. You were pretty much everywhere, from the Mirror to the Guardian. You've been pretty much everywhere, all over the place.
Very surprised. Yeah, I was quite pleased because I was very nervous to make this work because I didn't want it to look like I was taking the mickey out of anyone. But at the same time, I felt like sometimes you have to do something sort of humorous and ironic to make the point, make people actually listen to what you're saying, which is a lot of what of my work is all about that, really. And so BuzzFeed picked up on it, and then after that it went really crazy, actually, and then it was in People magazine in America, like something, you know, like that. So I was really pleased that people started talking about it. So, yeah. Just ignore the online comments, obviously, but...
I'm not sure if we got more work
I think
after
that's
this.
the last one.
That's
Yeah.
the last one.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So what you're working on at the moment, and what's happening? What's next for you?
So I'm working on the Sky show at the moment. So that will be all about freedom of speech and censorship. So that's going to be, like I said, maybe this year or next year. It's going to be in Nottingham at the New Art Exchange. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. So I've got lots of stuff to come. So
That sounds very exciting. We look forward to see that show come to life, really. Well, I would like to open up to the public and see whether there is anyone who has any question. And yeah, don't be shy, and ask as much as you want to, really. Yeah, no? Yeah. You knew it. I told you that. I was just going to throw you there. But yeah, that's the opportunity. If you're an artist, especially, and you're thinking of applying for any funding, you could just ask about that and other things. Okay.
Hello. I'm wondering how much of your work contains story as such. You make bold statements, and it seems very impactful from that sense. But I wonder what else is behind it. And then what other direction, it's kind of a two-part question, what other direction you might take in terms of finished product as well. There's a lot of photography there. Does your work take on other forms too? Because for me, there's something quite reminiscent of, say, Tracy Emin. That's probably been said to you before.
yeah, I think...
You've actually been compared to her, right? There was an article said, mention you like the new Tracy Emin, really.
Yeah, I think her work in particular has a lot of story behind it. And I'm not sure mine does in that way, I suppose. I think because I'll have the story behind it, but then my work, I suppose, has the finished product. And it's, even though it's a picture of me, I don't think I particularly want my story too much in it. I think maybe because I'm quite private as well. But I suppose I want it to be kind of a thing that lots of people can relate to. But I think because now I'm hopefully branching out more into performance work and live performance. So this is something I haven't really done before. So I'm hopefully doing that this year with Valentina's help. So yeah, I think live performance is the way forward for me in that sense. But I find that very frightening, very scary doing something live like that. Because I think with that, you sort of can control it. You've got all the control, but with a live performance, you're a bit more vulnerable, I think. So that's something I definitely want to look towards doing with the next work. That's helpful.
Anyone else? Any question? Okay.
Oh, thanks,
well, Sarah,
guys.
thank you so much, for being here today. It was really, really good to have you on our stage. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.